I want to thank you, Mr. President, for standing with Israel and supporting peace through direct negotiations. But I think that standing your ground, taking this position of principle, which is also, I think, the right position to achieve peace, I think this is a badge of honor. And I want to thank you for wearing that badge of honor, and also to express my hope that others will follow your example, Mr. President. So I want to thank you.
And that exchange yesterday, obviously a big week here in international politics. Welcome back, everyone. Israeli Prime Minister will address the UN General Assembly tomorrow, facing a very different reality than he did a year ago. His closest ally in the Arab world, former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, now on trial. Israel's once close relationship with Turkey, now distanced. Perhaps that's why the Palestinians' push to be recognized as a state by the UN seems threatening not just to Israel, but to many folks, including, of course, Jewish Americans. Another day at the UN and attempts to prevent Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, from requesting formal UN recognition of Palestinian statehood have remained unsuccessful. President Obama says that he's not opposed to the creation of a Palestinian state, but that it shouldn't happen this way. His opposition twofold. First, he, along with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who you just heard from, and other world leaders, believe the discussion of Palestinian statehood should happen through direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Reiterated that belief in meetings with Netanyahu yesterday. Secondly, it's U.S. policy to insist that there can be no Palestinian state so long as Hamas rules Gaza, supports Gaza, and supports terrorism and refuses to recognize Israel's right to exist. Now, the issue back home is that the president is unfriendly towards Israel. That's how it's perceived in certain corners. If you remember, he got 78% of the Jewish vote back in 2008, but his approval rating slipping with that group down 54%, largely because of displeasure with Obama's Israel policy. And whatever you think, it certainly was a major factor in the loss of Anthony Weiner's seat, a seat that was held by Democrats since 1920, went to Republican Bob Turner, who made the issue of Israel and Obama one of the major campaign issues. Now, realizing his popularity slipping with the electorate, he claims it's misinformation. Regardless, he is stepping up, the president that is, his outreach to the Jewish community ahead of the elections next year, starting with a conference call with Jewish leaders around the country today. The question, though, is, can he overcome the perception that he is not as friendly as prior presidents to Israel, a label he got after criticizing Israeli settlements back in 2009 and snubbing Netanyahu at a White House visit back in March of 2010. To talk about his perception in the Jewish community, we're joined by Rabbi Jamie Alpert, and she leads Congregation KTI in Port Chester, New York, and was on that conference call with the president earlier today. Rabbi, thank you for a few minutes.
It's my pleasure.
Well, before you even say how the call went today, tell what people say, what your congregation says to you. Apparently, in synagogues across America, rabbis are getting an earful about what's happening, not just obviously in Manhattan at the UN, but obviously the perception of the president in Israel. What kind of stuff do you hear?
Mostly that people are concerned. They're concerned for the future of Israel. They're concerned for the security of Israel. And they are also concerned about the United States' relationship with Israel.
Is there one big concern that they think the president, they're not sure about Obama's commitment to Israel on?
Well, I've definitely heard that many times. There is that fear and this perception that President Obama is not as close with Israel as our previous presidents have been. But I will say it's my understanding that President Obama is a real supporter of Israel. It's just that he expresses his support differently from his predecessors.
You heard the call today. How did that go? Because at noon, in addition to yourself, you had a lot of religious leaders basically on one conference call. What was the message that the president delivered?
The president really reiterated what he said at the UN, saying that the U.S. was absolutely a close friend of Israel and that the support is ironclad.
Did he get any questions?
There were two. One was about what would happen with Turkey and Egypt and how that might affect Israel's security. And again, President Obama was very clear and direct, saying that the United States supports Israel's right to be secure, and isn't afraid to apply pressure to Egypt and Turkey to step up and also resume friendlier relationships with Israel.
You know, Andrew, we saw certainly in District 9, Ed Koch, Dominic's been mentioning it, he rallied the base saying Obama's no friend to Israel right now. Is this primarily how we handled the settlement issue and how we maybe dissed Netanyahu back in March of last year? Is that the two big things that everyone's hanging their hat on?
I think that's the primary thing, and obviously there was a little bit of a dust-up when the president said that negotiations should start at the 67 lines, when that got some blowback saying, well, that's not fair to Israel as well. I think that's the bulk of it. And the fact that he does suffer by comparison to President Bush, who might not have had as articulate an Israel policy as President Obama does, but was so ironclad in that Israel can do no wrong and we stand by Israel 100% of the way that I think he does suffer a little bit by comparison.
And you also had the Wolfowitzes and the neocons there that had been so historically attached to Israel, they figured, hey, if they got a seat at the big table there for conversations about foreign policy, Israel's interests will be protected. This is going to be an issue in 2012, guys, right?
I'm not sure. I think there's time for the president to mend his perception problem with the Jewish community. And I think when it's all said and done, that, as I said yesterday, the Howman story saying that whether or not Obama was the first Jewish president, I'm not ruling out the fact that Obama will get as much of the Jewish vote as he did the last time around. I think it's a perception problem. He realizes that he's got a major problem and that he's on it as of right now.
Well, Jamie, if there was one thing, if he said, you know, Rabbi Albert, give me some free advice here, okay? What's the one thing that he could say if you threw a yarmulke on and went before your folks in Temple? What's the one thing he could maybe put some fears to rest out of his own mouth, not just on a conference call, but with the cameras going? What would he need to tell folks to say, okay, he's the guy I voted for 3 years ago?
Well, I think it would start with clear directives that he was in fact bringing Netanyahu and Abbas back to the negotiating table to really determine how to bring a lasting and sustainable peace to the region. I think more than words, it's time for us to see some action.
If he converted, that would help, right?
Or if he just asked for a bagel with schmear. I think that would work too.
That would go a long way.
I was told not to try and talk Yiddish, so I can't continue this. All right, Rabbi Albert, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we got to take a quick break, everybody. When we come back, showdown. Top two Republican contenders trade jabs ahead of tonight's big debate for the GOP. We're going to make Greg Paul pick one. He's not going to like that. We'll be having that and a lot more after this quick commercial break. Stay with us.